What's good, folks? Welcome to another edition of the Cover One Film Room, the show that gives you the hows and the whys behind both the good and the bad of the Buffalo Bills. I am one of your two hosts, Anthony Prohaska, joined as always by Erik Turner. Erik, this is a fun episode because normally it's me and you. From time to time, we have different guests, people who cover different things. And then sometimes we get some players in the film room with us
We
to talk
do.
ball. Today is a special episode. How you feeling?
Great. I'm excited. We're going to talk ball with a professional Bills player. Like, why would I not be excited? And it's someone that we hyped up for the last couple of weeks when we're talking free agency and this offseason. And so, yeah, I'm excited to talk some ball, man.
Yes, we spent a good chunk of our Buffalo Bills defensive free agent targets episode talking about this person, his skill set, his traits, his play style, what he could bring to the Bills defense individually, but also what that could potentially do from an unlocking standpoint for them schematically. So with that being said, we are very, very, very excited to welcome to the Cover One Film Room, Mr. Michael Hoecht, formerly of the Los Angeles Rams and now of the Buffalo Bills. Mike, we appreciate you taking the time. Thanks for hopping on.
Thanks for having me. Also a Toronto native coming home.
Nice.
This is like the perfect situation. I'm going to have about 150 Canadians from Toronto crossing the border every home game. So I'm pumped.
That's awesome. Yeah, we love to hear that. And so, also kind of alluding to perfect situations. You're in a pretty cool situation right now where you are physically. Where are you at right now? What you doing?
So I'm actually in Maui. The NFLPA has their summit every year. And interesting story getting here is NFL free agency opened up at noon Eastern on Monday for free agents. You can start the tampering window where your agents can negotiate. I take off at 9 Pacific, which is noon Eastern. I'm in contact with my agent for about the first hour of the flight, and then all of a sudden Wi-Fi cuts out. And I specifically had checked. I was like, hey, is there going to be Wi-Fi on this plane? Like, it's very important to me. If there wasn't going to be, I would have gotten like a Starlink or something that was going to connect me.
Yeah.
And Wi-Fi cuts out, and I asked the flight attendant, and I was like, hey, Wi-Fi's out. Is it going to be back on? She's like, yeah, no more Wi-Fi until we get there. So I'm 3.5 hours just in the sky, no idea what's going to happen. My agents are talking to people, they're taking phone calls, and then land in Maui. And between the time that I landed at the airport and arrived at the hotel, I became a Buffalo Bill. So awesome. It was a stressful 3 hours, but made the arrival to the hotel pretty sweet.
So that's got to be super exciting. You're basically going back home. You have all your friends and family coming to all the games. I'm sure they're super excited for you. Were you a Bills fan growing up?
Yeah, I mean, all my family definitely are, and just growing up in Canada too. Like, I was a diehard Maple Leafs fan. I was kind of a hockey first, and then we moved down to Ohio. So then I was sort of in the Cincinnati world a little bit, but Buffalo was always there, just because anytime you want to go to a NFL game, like you're going to Bills Mafia, and you're crossing the border right there. And going. So, they've always just had like a special place in my heart, and they've been a big part of my football history as a fan, growing up.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome to hear. Yeah, so kind of a little bit of a homecoming for you, a little bit coming to Buffalo.
Definitely. And I know, I know my family's all really excited. It's awesome just to be able to literally the closest possible team that they're now driving to games rather than hopping on a 6-hour flight.
Yeah, that's a significant difference, having to go all the way to the West Coast versus being
100%.
Hop, skip, and a jump to Buffalo. You kind of went through your background a little bit there. A couple of questions that we have for you, your journey coming out of college and coming to the league. Playing weight has been a question that, different things are listed on different sites. And
310, 267. It's quite the range, Mike.
Yeah.
So I'm 267 pounds. For those who don't know, I came into the league as a 3 technique, and that's what I played at Brown. That's what I pretty much played my entire life. And so I was around the 300 mark, maybe like 295 coming out. And sort of how the evolution went was got into the league. And, my first year, spent the year on practice squad, was playing with guys like Aaron Donald, Michael Brockers, Ashawn Robinson, Morgan Fox, Sebastian Joseph Day, guys that are really, really athletically talented, and I learned a ton from. But that's also an absolutely loaded defensive line room. So, I knew that my best chance to get on the field and get on the 53 was going to be special teams. And so, it's a little hard to run down on the old kickoff rules at 295. So, I slowly started coming down in weights, and, I kind of got the okay that from the coaching staff, and, they're like, whatever you need to do to get on the field, go do it. So started going down in weight, and then, around get down to maybe 280 and start really carving out a special teams role. Playing a ton, having a great time. And then, then you're into the 275 because you're like, well, if I could run that fast at 280, like, wait till you see me at 270. And I was just having a blast doing it. I was just, taking every opportunity that I was given, and making sure that I was prepared for the role that was going to put me in. And then once I was in the 270 range, they were kind of looking around, and we had some injuries at outside linebacker. And, I sat down with the outside linebacker coach at the time, and he was like, do you want to start learning how to like cover people and play outside linebacker? And so I was like, absolutely, like more play time on the field, like sign me up. And we go into play Kansas City. It was either a Sunday or Monday night game. And they're like, all right, we're going to throw you in for maybe 5-10 snaps at Arrowhead. And I was like, great, I'm going to get my feet wet in this. And then the Terrell Lewis, he had a back injury. And so end up playing 55 straight snaps. Not 100% sure what I was doing at all the time.
He blacked out there.
Yeah, and I'm like lined up in the slot, and I've never covered anybody in the let alone Pop Warner or like college. Like I've never been in coverage, and I'm lined up with Kelsey in the slot, and it's like, all right, like we're just gonna have to figure this out on the fly. And I just have like a very clear like image and hearing of Mahomes of the wide 80 snaps the ball, and it actually. It taught me a lot. We had to learn by fire. I would come back to the bench pretty much after every series. Coach is pulling up the iPad, and they're teaching me things, and they're drawing it up, and they're talking terminology. And Leonard Floyd, who was playing opposite me during that period, and he helped me a ton. He taught me a lot of the terminology when we were out there. If the snap's imminent, I would look at him, and it was like, hey, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. He would, get me right. But it was trial by fire, and so it was really fun. So that was the long-winded answer to say I'm 267 pounds.
267. No, we appreciate that refresher and update and the story. The thing that really stuck with me is you paid your dues on special teams, obviously coming up, through your journey, and you blocked what, 3 kicks last year? Is there something that you pick up on or you study leading into the game when it comes to allow you to block these kicks? Is there some kind of tendency you're looking for? Is there something you're doing prior to the snap that allows you to again affect the kicking game?
Yeah, I think, those 3, they're all a little bit different. And I think we schemed them up earlier in the week. The first one against Seattle, we had a good plan that their tackles were, heavy leaners, because especially in field goal protection, you really just have to like not give up any movement for about 2 seconds. And, then it's the kicker's job to knock it through. But we knew that they were leaning. So we almost had Fisk pull back, and that with the tackle leaning down, that opened up the gap, and then Hummel's on the other side to my left there, and he's pulling that tight end away, and it just kind of opens that gap up. And the hardest part there is a lot of times players are able to get through that crease, but you have to get that tight end's leg back, and it's a timing between getting both my feet in the ground while still moving forward. And then it's similar to a shot clock, where once your second foot hits the ground, it's time to go up, because you no longer have time to keep going forward.
Right.
So at that point, shot clock's off in your head that I'm through the line, which, you have to rush hard every single time you go, because even if you don't rush, or if you rush hard every time, you're not guaranteed to block it. But if you don't rush hard, there's about a 0% chance you're going to block it. So, it's almost one of those, you do it the same every single time. Most of them don't end up being successful. And then the one time you're through, can't miss your layup. So the shot clock has to go up. You have to get tall, knock it down. And and then we got to pick the ball up, and we got to score.
What's that rank? Obviously you're like a full-time defensive guy now too, but you're still working the special team stuff. Where does blocking a kick rank up there as far as like getting a sack or doing something sweet defensively? Because from like a unique perspective, like I feel like it's harder, or is it harder to block a kick versus getting a sack? For me, I feel like the answer is yes, because you don't see a lot of block kicks. So like, where does that rank up there
I
for
mean,
you?
it's more rare. I think, a sack is obviously, that's the money stat that's, very much affecting quarterbacks. And, but I know it's with punt that blocking a punt, you're about 80% chance to win the game. Same thing with scoring on special teams. So, they're just very different plays. I'm not gonna pretend that, having, 20 sacks versus blocking 5 kicks, I'd still probably take the 20 sacks.
Facts.
Uh,
Yeah.
but this is blocking kicks, especially PATs and extra points. That is absolutely points off the board. And a sack on second down. A team has third down that they could potentially negate it and still convert. Versus this is you are actively taking points off the game. And back to that Arizona clip, that blocked kick there. The way that game shook out is Arizona now on the final drive of the game. They're in the red zone, but they're down by 4, so they're no longer kicking and going into overtime, and so they now have to press in order to get in the end zone. We picked the ball off, and that ended up clinching our playoff berth, which gave us a Week 18 bye.
That's awesome stuff, man. It's something that we've had players in the film room, and we've talked about holders when it comes to kicking. So to have the other side about blocking kicks, that's awesome. So we're going to talk a lot about your versatility. We're going to break down some film showing your versatility. But what I find interesting, of course, this is the film room, is during the week when you guys are getting that game plan and you're going through and you're getting the playbooks or whatever you guys are working on. What meeting room are you in, Mike?
That's a great question. The vast majority of my time is going to be outside linebacker, and
Okay.
it's we're going to have lots of conversations with Buffalo, being able to figure out and how creative we're going to be able to tie in the front end and the back end, and non-known rushers, and everything that goes into playing defense and changing up pictures for quarterbacks, unregulated fronts, making sure that we know what protections we're getting, all the things that go into like good defense on third down. But so and obviously haven't gotten to Buffalo yet, so we're not. I'm not 100% sure. The schedule of meetings. I'm going to call Taylor Rapp and Dave Edwards, both former Rams that I was on the Super Bowl team with and know pretty well. And so I'll get a lay of the land there, but it's going to be a combination of everything because when you play in that spinner role that I was on for a lot of our third down package last year with the Rams, you end up, sometimes you're the middle linebacker, sometimes you're a 3 tech, sometimes you're an outside linebacker. And so you kind of need to know a lot of the different spots. And,
Exactly.
For me and my like story arc, that's the perfect role for me because I've played 3 tech, I've been a shade, I've played outside linebacker. And even last year, now I'm, dropping into Tampa 2 and, shaving cover 2, sidelines. So there's just a lot of versatility and a lot of the skills that I end up using are kind of position ambiguous. And so that's where, I'm an outside linebacker. I'm a defensive end. I'm going to be working primarily with defensive end and like the defensive line to be able to rush and do, our fronts there, shut down the run game. And then when it comes time for third down, when it's the money down, that's when we get creative. That's when we give, our loaded outside linebacker and defensive line group. That's when we start teeing off.
Yeah, absolutely. That spinner role, that you played with LA, you just mentioned, you alluded to it, like all the kind of different hats that you were wearing and responsibilities that you had. What is for you, like it individually preparing each week? What does that look like for you, knowing that you're going to be used in a multitude of ways, impacting the game potentially in a multitude of ways? So, and are there any like certain things that you found work for you from a film study standpoint, or do you have a certain rhythm or routine you going about like how you prepare your week, knowing that you are a versatile player who occupies multiple spaces?
Yeah, I mean, last year was a ton of fun because I got to play a lot of different positions, and it was we had to learn them fast. So, throughout the normal rhythm routine of the day, I'm with the outside linebackers. We're going through the plan, and then we would meet as a rush group with the outside linebackers and the defensive line, and then we would go through everything, and then usually around lunch, I would pop in with Joe Caniglio, our outside linebackers coach, and then we would go over all the spinner stuff because I was kind of the only guy that was really needed to know that side of it. And it was a ton of responsibility because not only do you have to know, the full level of detail of outside linebacker and everything that goes into first and second down, your base stuff, how we're knocking out the run, how we're fitting gap scheme this week, tendencies, all the stuff that, players need when they're game planning, but then and you need to know, your nickel and dime, your normal rush
Right.
front, your 2 minute, your short yardage, all the situational football.
Yep.
And then you have on top of this, I also need to know the spinner stuff. And I need to know where I'm, drawing the eyes of the guard, where my hands are going, where my feet are going. For a lot of the season last year, and especially when we first installed it, we didn't have a green dot on the field when we would call this package. So I was in charge of having the wristband, getting the coverage out to the DBs, making the empty checks, any motion checks, two displaced weak, all the different checks that you need to make, as well as getting everybody lined up, making sure that I'm setting up, if I'm the drop guy, making sure I'm setting up the rushers. If I'm the rush guy, making sure my droppers are in the right place, making sure the communication's right across the board. And then on top of that, getting all that information and bringing it back to the coaches on the sideline and relaying what they're seeing, what they're feeling like, how the cadence is going, all the information. So, that job for me is processing as much information as possible and being able to digest it and communicate it effectively, coach to player, player to coach, and then player to player.
So it sounds like you had a lot on your plate, and this is exciting for us because last year the Bills had Dwayne Smoot, and he was a guy who was a big edge, a big edge, but in those passing downs, he would bump inside. And one thing we picked up on from watching film was it seems like he had a hand in some of those, pass rush calls or checks that you kind of alluded to. So when last year, it sounds like you had a hand on that stuff at the line of scrimmage, whether it's calling out checks or say, hey, they're running this protection. This is the stunt that we wanted to run versus that. Is that fair to say that you had responsibility on the field when it comes to that then?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it was my responsibility to make sure that we're communicated and lined up correctly. And, I took it as my own personal mission that, if something went wrong, we weren't aligned correctly, a stunt was ran wrong, communication isn't right, that, it's my responsibility to make sure everybody's on the same page. And so I have to know this, without blinking. I have to just be, it's got to be in my DNA. I have to know it better than everybody, such that, on the fly, when people ask questions, I already know what they're thinking and the part of the call that they're not thinking
Right.
about, and how to be able to communicate. And sometimes, it's super subtle, as just like a little finger, or some little check, because sometimes you can like look at a teammate's eyes and you sort of get like a feeling, is like, I know you're missing something here, and you just have to like give a subtle reminder or a
Yeah.
clue. And as soon as you do that, and that's the stuff you work on all week during practice too, and during walkthroughs. And
Mhm.
make sure that, especially in practice and a walkthrough, like, it's not always going to be perfect, but you got to be able to fix your mistakes on the fly and be able to communicate effectively when things are going on. And, when the music's loud and you're emulating crowd noise, and you got to be able to non-verbally communicate and, get information out and make sure that everybody's on the same page. Because it's why football is the greatest sport in the world. Is you could have 10 guys that win their matchups and are perfect. One guy doesn't, and that could be a touchdown, that could be a game or a season over. So at the end of the day, like, you just have to make sure that everybody is tied in and glued in, and all of that's communication. And I'm honestly so excited to get with this new front and
I
be able to
love it.
learn how to communicate, learn body languages of guys, and be able to talk non-verbally or just verbal checks, and disguise things, get like a whole new terminology. I'm sure there's going to be a whole Buffalo defensive line dictionary that I'm just going to have to learn every single thing for. But this is what I love. Like, this is football. This is the game we play. It's the game we love. It's why we do it, and it's really, really fun.
Yeah, and it's why we do this. We love to bring on, guys like yourself that can slow the game down for fans, and really translate it, and so that the average fan can understand it. And so we're gonna transition to some of this film where we get to all geek out, especially you, kind of explain it to us, walk us through the scheme, walk us through the techniques and assignments, anything that comes to mind. It seemed like last year, especially, a lot of your production came on early downs, first and second down. 51 out of your 61 tackles came on those early downs. 24 out of 30 of your pressures came on those early downs. 3 out of your 3.5 sacks came on those early downs as well. And so we're going to take a look at an early down play where you're rushing the passer. So I want you to, again, walk us through the scheme, the technique, the assignment, anything that comes to mind on this play.
Yeah, I mean, this play is actually a unique and kind of a funny one to bring up first. So this is in our rush package where we had, our 5 known rushers. I'm essentially in that spinner position, which is, usually just a bigger body edge position playing middle linebacker.
Mhm.
And we had called this a lot in this game. And so the Patriots were now searching for different answers to try and get us out of this front. So this is, an overloaded front, meaning Kobe and Fisk and BY are over there to the right of the screen.
Right.
And, there's 3 guys there, and then me and Verse are to the left, 3 guys right, 2 guys left. They're going to slide the protection to the overload. Ideally giving me and Verse over there on the left one-on-ones with the guard and the tackle there,
Man
which
side,
is
right? Yep.
yeah, which is great for running games. What is so interesting about this play is they're in 12 personnel right now, and they're under center, which is not typically a third down, known passing formation or situation where we're going to be calling this. And so my guess is that earlier in the game there was going to be a snap where they went under center, and we would have checked out of our overload front because I
Mhm.
mean if they just run the ball right there in the A gap, like there's a good amount of
Yeah.
space there, and so you
Yeah.
don't necessarily want to be on this and under center if they're going to be running the ball. But I think what happened in this game is, we were winning in the game. They're starting to having to go fast. So I think we made the sideline adjustment that if they come out of under center, they're just trying to get us out of our, rush situation here.
Right.
So usually we would get out of it, but we kind of just said, screw
Just
it,
roll
we're
with it.
staying in it, and we're just going to run it. And so, and this is the perfect situation to be like across the board. We know that if it came out under center, we would get out of it. But we all across the board is like, nope, just do it anyways.
Yep.
And so, specifically on my end here, Jared and I, we have, the man side over there, and, we're running stun. If you run it, I'm basically that guard has to protect inside. He can't get beat inside first. That's number one responsibility. So I know if I go right now, and Jared goes right now, that tackle's going to kick, opening up his inside shoulder. My thought process is I like capturing underneath that armpit or underneath that elbow, something that I can get leverage and lift. And we're hopefully putting that tackle or that guard in no man's land where he either has to come off on Jared, or if he doesn't, Jared's going to get a sack, or he's got to stay on me, in which case I can buy that inside, like the 9 of 59 there,
Yeah.
and start making my way through the B gap. Now, if that tackle slams down, I do still have contain, so I'm responsible there if the quarterback spins out. But I know that I can capture contain through that B gap, and
Mhm.
you're putting that guard in a bind. And this is what we would call one of our games, and if you have it to the man side and it's run well. But the key to this too is Jared has to have unbelievable get off here, because if that tackle doesn't kick, it's going to be impossible for me to capture that inside arm. So Jared's off the ball. He's got to be flying. He's honestly such an important piece to this game. And then he and I have to work together in order to do this. So that's something I'm excited to, work with, the Bills on. And you have to have like a timing and a tempo of the guys that you're
Yeah.
running games with, and you get really used to, like, when I'm in last year when I was rushing with BY, when I was rushing with Fisk or Kobe or Verse, like I know exactly where they're going to be, and I know what the timing and tempo is, and you just get really really used to it. So that's what OTAs are for, that's what training camp's for, and then we go put it on tape on Sundays.
We had Greg Rousseau on the show a couple seasons ago. We were talking about this offline with you, but the point you just mentioned, one of the points in the episode, he talks about, if he's running a game opposite of Daquan Jones, it's different if he's running it opposite of Ed Oliver. Like their get offs
Yeah.
are different. He knows their
Yep.
plans are different. So he tries to pattern his get off to match what they're trying to do, get your angles right, get your timing right. Is that something, because, especially with what you guys did in LA, like in this past year in 2024, like all the activity, the games up front, the stunts, talk about just like, how much planned stunts and games you guys had up front, but then how you coordinated so well with one another. Cause there really was a lot of nasty activity for you guys in LA in 2024.
Yeah. And I think the biggest part too is the coaches gave us a lot of autonomy to, call our own stuff. So, in this clip here, Kobe, Fisk, and BY are kind of working together, and then me and Fisk are working together. Now, I think BY is dropping here. So Jared and I in this, we're able to call kind of our own stunt. And, throughout practice and everything, I loved this game with Jared just because Jared's got elite get off. That tackle's going to kick. That tackle's worried about his speed. And if he's not, he definitely should be. And so I knew that crease was going to open up. And, so how the progression of like rushing is going to go is, you're going to come into a game and you're going to know like, all right, our first stunt, this is kind of what we want to do. And then, there's counters off of it too. But that could also change where, let's say early in the game, Jared takes a quick inside move and, goes and gets a sack. Well, we're going to know that tackle is now going to be extra cognizant to protect his inside.
Yes.
So maybe this game isn't probably the next one we go to, because if that tackle's leaning inside, worrying about the counter, then Jared should just go speed and I'll go work an inside game as well. Or, I'll cover him up if he takes inside and we can swap contain responsibilities. So, you come into a game with a plan of like, here's the 2 or 3 games in kind of the order that we probably want to call them. But then as the game progresses and things happen, you do need to make tweaks and adjustments, knowing that, you're not just calling it for the sake of calling it, you're calling it for a reason. And in this situation here, it was Jared's about to, give every impression that he's just about to speed rush and run around him. That tackle kicks and, it ends up being the perfect game.
And what's so exciting about even just a simple game and stunt like this is the guy I comped you to was Lorenzo Alexander. When the Bills, this regime, Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott first came to Buffalo, they had Lorenzo, and he was kind of in the same mold as you. He played offensive line, he played D line, played D tackle. Then he lost a bunch of weight, played off the ball for the Bills, and they used him very creatively. And that's why we are happy to get, for the Bills to sign you. And they used to run these type of games and stunts between Zoe and Kyle Williams. And Kyle Williams was the key to that entire pass rush and stunt game, because he would call, like you said, he would call a lot of these type of stunts and when to use them in those high leverage situations. So it's good to hear that you have, obviously we talked about your processing and what you have to do during the week to really, get to this point. But the fact that it goes from the meeting room to the field, that's exciting to hear when we're talking the Bills pass rush plan, because it's something that Anthony and I have been critical of over the last year, because we haven't seen the same creativity that we saw early on with this regime.
If you go back to that clip too, I do for the ball lovers out there. I'm obviously the one that like comes through here, and I'm forcing the pressure, and that's great, that's awesome. The key to this play, and this is what I think the biggest difference between watching a play and like knowing ball and not. The key to this play is 2 guys. Well, it's BY and it's Fisk here. So if you go from the start there, BY's body posture and, as we're lined up in this front, he has to make that right tackle believe that he's rushing, even though that he's dropping. That's tricky to do, because when you're dropping, you almost want like your weight back, because you have to go cover guys and you have, you're going the other direction. But everything, your body language, your demeanor, you have to like make it that I'm a known rusher so that tackle kicks. And that gives Fisk just enough time, because Fisk is ultimately responsible for contain on that side, and he's doing it through the B gap. So if that tackle doesn't respect BY as a rush threat, if he knows BY is dropping, he's going to slam down on Fisk, and it's going to be a lot harder, because Fisk is the one that ends up getting the sack here, or making the tackle. And that doesn't happen without the body language and demeanor of BY, and it doesn't happen with Fisk knowing that he has a nanosecond get off where that tackle's kicking to BY, and he has to be able to go contain through it before he gets slammed down on. Other important piece of this, you look at Kobe Turner, he knows he's got the tough down, he's got the double team, so he's occupying both the guard and the center, helping out Fisk, helping out me. and then knowing that he's got to cover up where if the quarterback scrambles out wherever he goes through, and Josh does this all the time when people don't do it right,
Yep.
is and that's demoralizing because you have a great rush, and Kobe Turner's kind of the security blanket in this to make sure that everything, if the quarterback tries to scramble, he's now responsible for recontaining and recovering, and you can see him start to work there, and it's kind of a vice tackle between the two.
Love it.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's I love that. You're like, oh, for the ball throwers out there. Way to set that up. Well done. Very well done.
All right. So
we're
going to go on to the next clip here, Mike. Now, this is third down situations, those pass rush situations. I talked about your early production. We talked about that already. But I love the creativity, again, when it comes to these 5-man surfaces, these, plays that you have, 5, 6 men on the line of scrimmage. But in the end, you don't know how many are coming post-snap. So I want you to walk us through this sack against Arizona. Kind of an overload situation again to the left of the screen. Once again, similar, defensive front. Walk us through what's happening prior to the snap and then post-snap.
Yeah, so this play, similar to the last one where we're in this overload, and this was kind of our bread and butter on third down, was me and Verse, together, hopefully drawing the man side, and then Kobe Fisk and BY over there working against the slide. And how this came about is running back in the backfield. We have one play called. As soon as they motion to empty, we have a check and adjustment that we need to get out, and that was a game plan specific for the Cardinals, which I'm obviously glad we made because we played them in week 2 and they beat the brakes off of us, and thankfully got the job done in week 17. But so this is a check. I'm making sure that they're aware. They've got their hands in the dirt. It's it can be hard for them to see that. And, especially this is a game at home, and, so it's obviously loud when the defense is out there places. And I can't wait to hear Bills Mafia, the level of noise. That's, I can't wait. So I'm clapping, trying to make sure that they're aware, and, they should know. And, the guys, everybody almost always knows, but, I'm making sure, like I said earlier, that if it's messed up, it's my responsibility. So I'm just going to make sure I over communicate and get the check out, and just try and be as loud as possible so everybody knows. Because also in that situation, guys are hand in their dirt and they're loading up and they're ready to go attack. So they might miss, shorter running backs getting out of the backfield. So then here, same type of attack plan. So me and Verse, we're taking the man side, and Fisk and Kobe are running a game here, and I believe this is going to be Fisk looping around. If you let it run for a second, if you can. But I'm responsible for buying that guard. So no, this is just a straight rush. So I'm buying his guards. His presence. It's 5-0. We have 5 rushers. They're responsible 1-on-1 for each of us, and the way that we kind of got to is to occupy him, you have to give that same demeanor that I was talking about with BY, that you are a rusher in this. And so, your first 2 steps, there should be absolutely no difference between when you're rushing and when you're dropping. And that occupies him just long enough so that Kobe now has the space and the timing where, Kobe just has to cross the center's face, balance up the rush. And that gives him so much more space. And from that moment, as soon as the guard, usually how the timing works is, as soon as the guard's eventually going to realize you're a dropper, his eyes are going to snap, you're gone, you're out of there. And so I'm basically insulating the inside receiver there, dropping back visual off of Kyler, and just reading the quarterback's eyes, don't get beat across your face. And then as soon as you're here in this sort of low hole area, it's the same sort of shot clock, opportunity where if the quarterback starts to scramble, and Kyler Murray obviously scrambles a ton, as soon as he starts to scramble, I'm now bonus and I can go recontain it. So you'll see me, as soon as that pocket sort of breaks down, I'm triggering to make sure that if Kyler starts sprinting to the sideline, it's my responsibility to clean it up and slow him up for the rest of the rush to continue to contain there. So there's a lot that goes on in these types of plays. We try to we try to make, at least, last year, and this is what I think really good defenses do, and it's what good football teams do, because offense does it, is things that look the same that play out different. So offense is going to do that with motions and formations and things that look the same but end up playing different. And the same thing on defense. We want things to look the same so that we know how they're going to protect it, and then we can drop non-known rushers. We can run different stunts. It allows us to sort of dictate, the tempo of things and the protection of things.
We had we had follow-up questions to this play. You literally answered all of them in that amazing
Yeah,
breakdown. So
yeah.
that was awesome. But I just wanted to piggyback on that last point from you, and you mentioned this a bit offline when we were talking. You mentioned it again now, like the whole idea defensively now, it's similar to offensively. Like you want to make at the presentation pre-snap look the same, and then you want to change that pre to post snap picture. And this
Yep.
play is so great, juxtaposing it with the first play that we showed, because it's that same package, from that first time you inverse trying to draw that man side. You got Fisk, Turner, and Byron Young on the other. And then you mentioned it too, like it's gonna create that 5-0 protection, and now you're manipulating that guard, and then you're dropping. So if you are an offense preparing for this, or if you're studying tape and you're seeing like, okay, if they get into this package, we might get the game from the man side, or this is what they like to do. You're playing off that and Jedi mind tricking and using your own tendencies to kind of manipulate their thought process. And then the layering of all of it for you individually, like the check pre-snap, but then post-snap, manipulating that guard, then dropping, letting Kyler's eyes guide you to where you need to be, but then still being responsible for him if he breaks out. And like you mentioned, how you trigger right away. It's just such a great example of, defenses, you get into those packages, but you can manipulate an offense based on leaning into what you do, tweaking some things here and there, but then there's multiple levels and layers to the responsibilities within it, and that's what makes it all work.
Isn't football just the best? There's
Bro,
just so much
it's
that
the
goes
best.
on.
All day.
It's the chess
all
match.
day.
Like I always think about it all the time. Like you can nerd out on every detail down to what step and is your alignment 2 inches to the right or to the left, and then you go into technique, and then you go into scheme, and you can go into and then you go into how do you build rosters, and how do you work with the salary cap, and then you go and level further, and it's like how does the Bills play in the larger Buffalo community, and what's our place in the NFL, and then at the NFL being the most profitable sports league. There's just every single detail of this game is just so interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and honestly, I didn't want to break down this entire reel, but it's a 58-second reel because I love this package that you guys use with the Rams. So again, explain this package, this defensive front, because here's one from that Patriots game. Again, this isn't a play we weren't going to break down, but I'm going to show it because you do a similar thing here. This time you get that twist that you were talking about from Fisk.
Yeah, I mean, same type of thing. Plays that look the same but play different. And in this specific one, Kobe and Fisk are running the stunt, and if I was not in there, or if I was a smaller body, a normal middle linebacker, or if we're nickel or dime, something like that. A lot of times offenses will go what's called 4-for-3, where they're taking that backside guard and adding him into the slide, and then they'll usually chip out with their running back on verse, so that or the whoever's on the solo there to give that tackle a little bit of relief. And so that's what you get a lot, and that's why we love so much having this 5 big rush group, is that you can't really do that. You can't borrow that backside guard, because if you do, you either have me at 267 one-on-one with a running back, or you're going full slide, and that sort of limits a lot of the things that you can do, and there's answers for that on defense. So we try and dictate what the offense kind of has to do, and once we sort of know how they're going to protect it, we can make our adjustments. And I'm at this point, I'm buying that guard, making sure that he doesn't have time to snap back on Fisk doing the loop here. And Fisk and Kobe are running a very similar game to what Verse and I ran in the first clip there, where it's just an interior version of it, where the get off at a Fisk is just as important to pull that guard, so that Kobe has enough time to be able to buy that inside peck of the guard, penetrate through it. It's a very similar concept to how it's run. And the big part of this here too is making sure that that guard believes that I'm rushing, believes he's responsible for me, and that way he doesn't have enough time for Fisk to be able to loop through. And then I'm pretty sure on this play I just go glove up the running back too.
Yes. And so one of the things that we geek out about, I mean, we geek out about a lot of things football related, but simulated pressures and creeper pressures, and how that all ties into protection manipulation and what you can do to force an offense to keep in a tight end or a running back thinking that, they're bringing 5 or 6, and then actually no, it's just 4. Granted, you're swapping out traditional rushers for non-traditional ones, but I really love this one because the manipulation for the guard, the manipulation of the protection. Ramondre Stevenson, 38, stays in a little bit, just hesitates briefly so he doesn't get out into the route distribution early. And you almost get like a 2-for-1 because you manipulate 71, which, like you said, helps Fisk loop and be able to come down the barrel right down at May. And then when you pop out, you're picking up Ramondre, 38 right there. So you essentially like kind of take out 2 players because Ramondre is gloved up, like you said. 71 is on an island, not doing anything because he had to respect your rush. Now you've cleared a lane for Fisk. So it's the scheme of it along with the individual execution. And again, the dictation, that's so important in a game now where, like most of the rules favor the offense with how football is played. So everything that you can do to put the offense on the back foot and dictate to them, like that was just such a beautiful example from you guys.
Yep. And the other nice part too is you show 5 and you end up, so you show 5 rushers, but you end up rushing 4. And so that means you're playing with 7 in coverage, which, is always more helpful. So you
Always
end
got
up
the numbers
getting,
advantage. Yeah.
you get protections like you're rushing 5, but you get coverage like you're rushing 4, which is kind of the sweet spot.
Very well
Yeah,
said.
you're not, and that's the thing with the NFL. You're manipulating and attacking protections with that 4-man rush, so you're not having to insert that extra rusher. And it kind of plays to this as well on this play right here against Green Bay, because this one you're definitely man coverage versus the running back. But my question to you is, if the running back stayed in to block here, are you adding in as a rusher, or is your number
For
one
sure.
responsibility to peel off in man coverage?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends, and a lot of times it's not always man, but basically I'm responsible for that. But yes, if that running back stays in and that they go, a bigger protection, then I would just add on, and that's one of those. It's kind of an on the fly judgment call where if you abort your coverage to try and go get a sack, you better get the sack. Otherwise, because if they dump it off to your coverage and you're like, well, I kind of shot my shot, like that's that's bad ball. That's so it's one of those judgment calls, and that's why you have to work on so much situational football, and you have to rep stuff so often because you never really know like exactly when things are going to come up, and sometimes you just gotta overcome the whatever's going on in the play. And rules are great until you're in a situation that the rules aren't meant for. So yes, the short answer to that is I don't think if you go and get a sack, a coach is never going to be like, don't do that. But if you leave your responsibility, you better be 100% certain and you better make the play. Otherwise, not good.
Is there a kind of a point of no return for you on this one? Like if obviously you can, I mean, not obviously, but you can tell your eyes are right on Jacobs and you can see the body language he's starting to release. So you peel off and you go with him. Is there a spot where like if he would have delayed maybe a half a click longer, are you going to pot commit and try and get to the QB, or are you, as soon as he flashes, you're out with him no matter what?
Depends on the play. We kind of did it both ways last year. And that, the same type of thing where, you try and make everything look the same, and you do it a couple different ways. So there's definitely opportunities where, you're in this never ending chess match where, you pop out early and then you start to pop out and re-add in, and then you just go right now. So, if you just keep kind of doing the same thing every single time, there's the same way that every play has an answer on both sides of the ball. It's just who has the better answer for that particular one, and then sometimes both people are right, and it's just who wins their matchups. So you do have to do similar things in different ways in order to get the job done. Because like if the best tackles in the league, like if they know you're going speed to power, if they know you're going to be a power rusher, they have answers for that. They get paid a lot of money too, and you're not just going to be able to do the same thing every time. So it's really about like how creative and how smart and do you pull the right move and do the right situation, and are your eyes in the right place at the right time in order to sort of attack things in different ways. And so to answer your question, Yes, but there's definitely a point of no return where sometimes you just kind of have to go. But for the most part, like you should play sound football and just do sound football the right way. And let the scheme and your teammates, take care of you. You protect them, they protect you.
So we study a lot of film, obviously, as do you, I'm sure. So you play a lot of different positions. Whose film are you studying during the year? Like, whose film are you studying in the off season? Are you watching
Yeah.
linebackers? You watching D tackles? You watching edges? Like, where do you begin your film study when you're maybe in the off season? You're trying to refine your craft. Whose film are you watching?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of watch a lot. There was, there was a play. I think it was 2 years ago where Miles Garrett was doing the basketball dribble
Oh, the
crossover over
crossover.
the
Yeah.
center, and I love the way that looked.
You should convince Bills to
And
do that. Just
yeah, I mean, there's always stuff you can work on. I think very similar is what Van Ginkel's doing up in Minnesota, just because he does a lot of these similar concepts where a lot of times you have covered responsibilities, but they're using you up on the line of scrimmage in order to be able to set protections, and
yes.
so I think there's a lot of parallels there. And just good pass rushers, like just being around guys that are super technical, and there's always something that you're picking up from somebody. And then talking to offensive linemen and talking to tackles. That's another great reason why this NFLPA summit trip here is great, because, there's some of the best players in the league here. And, we all get to like talk ball, and, not everybody exactly wants to talk work all the time, but, I'll be a little bit of the annoying guy who's just like, dude, let's just go like talk some ball. Let's talk some technique. Let's do something. We'll nerd out on it. But, yeah, it's just there's football is one of those games that it's a never ending constant pursuit of knowledge, and you're never the second that you think you know something, you're just gonna be hit with a new piece of information, a new perspective on it, a new way of coaching it, a new way of thinking about it. You're gonna see somebody else in the league do it, and it's going to open up new doors and new pathways and new ways to be able to think about how you want to eventually, like, the ultimate goal is to like not let the offense score points. So within that's when you really get into the details, is like, all right, what is the grand plan to keep points off the board? And nice part too is Josh is going to throw up a ton of points, so we're going to be awesome as a
Good.
defense. I think I think the Bills are making some really, really good moves on the defensive side of the ball and the offensive side of the ball. So it's going to be a fun team. I cannot wait. Like, I'm just sitting around waiting for OTAs to start, and we can kind of get direction on how we're going to do it, and start learning all the things, the timing and the tempo, and start rushing with guys. And I'm excited to learn from Rousseau, and excited to learn from Bosa, and excited to learn from all the rushers. And I'm just, it's going to be really, really fun. There's a ton of work to do. But I'm, sitting on vacation. I was like, get me back to work. I need to be there.
Chomping at the bit.
And I might be the first person ever that's been sitting in Maui and just like, get me to Buffalo. I have to go
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, you're definitely the first person to be in Maui to be like, I gotta get to Buffalo. Yeah, like that.
It's March. Get me to Buffalo.
I need to be there. I got one last quick question for you. For myself, one of the things we noted in our tape study, and some of the things we mentioned, like your versatility, the alignment potential, size, athleticism, all that, and then so much throughout this episode, you have just put on the full knowledge display, and how much the mental side of football, how important it is, and how strong it is in this game, and how strong it is in you. But one of our favorite aspects of your game, the violence that you play with on the field, like just pulling guards, the Lions are pulling Penei Sewell on like a long trap, and you're banging it like the hell out of him, and then grabbing Gibbs. Some of your stunts where you're just absolutely annihilating guards and centers and tackles. The violence that you play with, is it just completely innate now? Is there some of it that's like still in the forefront of your brain where you're purposefully like, I need to like railroad this dude right now? Or is it just kind of like, nope, that's just how I play. It's just second nature. As soon as the snap hits, I'm blowing somebody up.
Yeah, I mean, I take a lot of personal pride in gap scheme runs because, in theory, you have, 300 plus pound guys full speed running at, 260-ish pound guys that, the advantage should be on the offensive side of the ball. But, I take a lot of pride in gap scheme. I take a lot of pride in handling pullers and, play and, perfect world, I would, hit some of these plays with my hands and be very technical. But there comes a time in this game where you just have to go light somebody up. You just have to like go get in there. And, in these plays too, my favorite thing about gap scheme too is, it's not because they're moving gaps. You can't just go one for one. You do have to be able to, like, in this play, this is a perfect example in the divisional round here where, you're responsible for taking on this offensive lineman, but you're responsible for outside and inside. So here in this situation, you're putting a dent and a cap on the coverage. You're allowing the rest of your teammates to fold over the top. You see Q-Lake coming down. Omar's over there. Guys are, because the offensive linemen are all already out leveraged on our defensive line. So you have to buy some time, make Saquon chop his feet, and then I'm responsible. If Saquon puts his foot in the ground and sprints to the sideline, that's my play. And then the added bonus, and this is where good football is you never go 11 for 11. And so it's a gap and a half. And my half responsibility I take as a full responsibility. And so, make sure that the edge is set, make sure that you have a cap on everything, that safeties and everybody walking down have space and time to see and cap off. And then that's when you just go make plays inside. And that's like gap scheme runs. Like that's my stuff. That's my shit.
We love it because you said gap and a half. We're like, oh my gosh, like dude, that is something that the Bills obviously ask a lot of their edge guys and D linemen because they play a lot of those too high safety structures. And so a lot of times they have that light box and they have their guys and their defensive front playing that gap and a half responsibility. So that was awesome. When you said that, our eyes just lit up because that is something we've talked about so often here in the film room.
Yep. Yeah. I'm excited. I can't wait. And, and those are the plays too, where you don't really get to practice many of them in OTAs because you don't have pads on. So those come up the first day of pads in training camp. I think across the league, everybody's like, it's gap scheme day. And that might as well be Christmas for me.
Oh my God. This was, absolutely awesome to have you in here. The amount we were already pumped and geeked up for this one, just again, like we talked about with having you as a target for this team and what we thought you could do. But yeah, just the level of knowledge you dropped here and how technically sound you made everything. It's just, it really is. And when we talk about it here all the time, like, cause we're breaking down tape, but the physical on-field execution is one thing, but it's so heavily tied to the mental side of the game and just your ability to see it, speak it, and everything. Yeah, this was an absolute treat. We are sincerely thankful for you taking the time, especially while you're enjoying Maui.
I know.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. I feel like that was good. I needed to talk some ball with somebody. I've been sitting for a couple of weeks, like trying to figure out contract stuff, and all that part of it is like great. Agents handle that. Like I want to do football, so this is great. I got to scratch that itch. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Hell yeah. Well, enjoy the rest of your time in Maui. We're excited for you to touch down in Buffalo. Whenever you do touch down in Buffalo, enjoy the rest of the week. Safe travels on flying back. Good luck with move and all that stuff. And we appreciate you taking the time. All you folks who watched this episode, thank you very much for tuning in. This has been a Cover One Film Room special edition with new Bills. I would say edge defender, but everything defender. Michael Hoecht, we appreciate you folks. Rate, review, subscribe, drop likes. Godspeed. We'll see you when we see you. And as always, go Bills.